I'm gonna go ahead, man, and start reading this bio now because it's a little bit, but I want to kind of set the stage, man, so everybody can kind of get engaged tonight. Um, so we're gonna have the topic for this week is being the man you were called to be, and we're gonna have a guest speaker. His name's Reverend Dr. Charles E Becknell. Um, he's my uncle. And so I'm just going to go ahead and read this bio real quick, man. So before he gets here, so it won't take in any of his time. Um, Very proud to introduce my uncle, my dad's oldest brother, the second of four children. Dr. Charles E. Becknell Sr. is an example of living African American history and New Mexico state history. Becknell Sr. was the founding director of what is now the University of New Mexico's Africana Studies program, directed by his son and namesake Charles Becknell Jr. Becknell Sr. grew up in segregated Hobbs, New Mexico. In the 1940s and 1950s, he went on to get his PhD, established the African American Studies program at UNM, serve on the cabinet of two New Mexico governors, and become an activist, pastor, and author. As a child in Hobbs, he and other African American students endured the taunts of white children and the unfairness of a system tilted against people of color. He recalled one incident where three white boys called him a racial slur, and when he punched one of them, he was paddled severely by the principal. The white boys got off without any punishment. In junior high school, his father received a set of the complete works of William Shakespeare, and the young Becknell spent summer vacation reading A Midsummer's Night Dream. When he returned to school in the fall, the teacher asked the class what they did over the summer. Other children had gone fishing and camping. They got to me, and I was just bursting. Charles, what did you do? I read Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream, he responded. And then added, I still remember the look on her face. Oh no, you people aren't ready for that yet. Those words still resound, you people. In spite of the challenges, he had perfect attendance in school. Well, except for one day in the 10th grade when he played hooky and went to shoot pool with a group of friends. His stepfather found out, but that evening at home ignored him. Becknell uneasily went to bed that night, putting on two pair of pants to soften any blows that and wondering when the inevitable covenants was going to happen. At 5 a.m. the next morning, his stepfather woke him up and took Becknell to work with him to his job as a handyman, mowing lawns and doing other hard labor. All day, they worked with no breakfast and no lunch. He worked me all day long, he said. You can either do this the rest of your life or you can go to school. I never missed another day. My mother told me, get a good education. That's something the white man can't take away from you. And I knew when I left home, I couldn't go back the same way I left. And my whole life was centered around making my mother proud of me, and I miss her. Becknell went on to get a basketball scholarship, got his BS degree in education, an MA in secondary education, and studied at Pepperdine, Duke, and Columbia universities with a special interest in Black studies before returning to New Mexico. The push for African American studies like Native American, Chicano, and women's studies came on the heels of Black student activism, the Watts riots, the war on poverty, and the rise of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights and anti-war movements of the 1960s and 1970s. At Columbia in 1969, Becknell took an African American history course. The first day there were about 300 Black students waiting for class to start when the professor walked in. He was white. Many students walked out, but Becknell stayed because the professor was one of the foremost experts in Black history. Students were upset and stayed away because they didn't want a white man grading their papers. Becknell approached the professor and suggested since he had a master's degree, he was qualified to grade the papers if the students came back to class. Word got out, students returned, Becknell graded papers, and even ended up with a stipend for his work. He returned to New Mexico and started teaching Black history at Albuquerque High School. Even though there were more Hispanic and white students than Black, about the same time, UNM students were pushing the administration to start an African American Studies program and suggested Becknell. The administration balked because Becknell had a master's degree at the time, but not a PhD. Do you have any other professor with this background? He asked, presenting his Columbia credentials. The administration admitted it did not, and so Becknell became the director of UNM's first Black Studies program. Due to a dearth of professionals available with Black Studies backgrounds, he became a teacher, counselor, advisor, and ombudsman. Establishing the department was a challenge. Students were clamoring for something more than programs built around white, European-descended men. It was a volatile period on campus at UNM and across the country. Becknell's memories of entering his office for the first time are of the smell of tear gas and the National Guard on campus. There was no academic blueprint for a Black Studies program and resources were limited, so Becknell reached out to the prominent Black leaders of the times. One ultra-conservative state legislator told Becknell about controversial Black activist Stokely Carmichael. Over my dead body will that man speak at UNM. Well, he spoke, he chuckled, as did Professor Angela Davis, civil rights activist Charles Evers, the brother of slain Medgar Evers, and activist and politician Julian Bond. That's what we had to do to get things done. I'm a firm believer if you have a need, there is someone out there who can help you fill that need, Becknell observed. In the oral history video, Becknell recalled his son Charles Jr. being carried around the house by Carmichael's shoulders. You know, the Stokely I know is not the Stokely that other people knew, he observed. Becknell said his biggest challenge as the founding director was getting out the word that the Black Studies program was available and children could come to UNM and get an education. The challenges were many. Okay, I wanted to be sure my first challenge that our students were treated fairly and they could pursue their academic work here on this campus without a whole lot of external type things. My challenge was to open up the world of blackness to these students so that they're more aware. And not so much for their sake, but for their children's sake and for the sake of community. They would have this information. They could go out and tell others about this information. Soon after the Black Studies program was established at UNM, Becknell moved on. Then Governor Jerry Apodaca called him to join his newly formed cabinet, and he stayed on in the following administration of Governor Bruce King. He also followed his calling to be a Baptist minister, as had his grandfather, father, 4 aunts before him, and also now his son, Charles Jr. It runs in the family. His younger brother was an attorney, And my grandma would always say, I have one son to keep me out of jail and the other one to keep me out of hell, referring to Uncle Charles. Becknell established the Emmanuel Missionary Baptist Church in Rio Rancho. Becknell is also an author. His most recent book, published in October 2019, is titled Voices from the African American Village. It takes a village to define a community. The book is a reflection of his own childhood in a segregated community and why he was so successful in life. Also, author of No Challenge, No Change: Growing Up Black in New Mexico, in which he discusses this part of New Mexican history with a hope for future change. He is state president of the Southern Leadership Conference and was a member of the New Mexico Black Leadership Conference in 1975. Becknell explained that in the pre-civil rights era, when he grew up, the African American community was referred to as a village. Parents didn't have much education, but knew it was important for their children. Mothers were strong disciplinarians, fathers were the final authority, and the elders, teachers, and other villagers, and most of all, the church, kept an eye on the youngsters and looked after each other. Becknell recalled chewing gum in church one Sunday morning. A lady in church, she was an usher. Chewing gum was unacceptable. She'd come over with a Kleenex in her hand, grab your jaws, and make you give up that gum, as his mother glared at him from from the choir stand. But it was discipline, and it was the school and the church and the home that really laid the foundation for who we are. My generation, we're all about. Becknell observed, we're sitting at the table because of what somebody else did. I think it was Jesse Jackson that said the hands that used to pick cotton now can pick presidents and mayors and legislators. I appreciate what my parents did. I'll never forget it. So that's the background, y'all. So hopefully y'all got a little insight on who will be speaking tonight. I think Uncle Charles is about 85, I would say. So make sure if y'all have any questions about the black and the blackness and growing up and all of that, that y'all put in those questions in the chat, and we'll stay engaged on what's going on. So he should be joining us in a little bit. Anybody got anything on your mind, man, before we get started?
I didn't know New Mexico was like that, man.
Yeah,
Wow.
man.
Segregated like that? Wow.
Yep. That was and it was right next to, and it's right next to Texas. So yeah, they was living the same way, man.
Yeah, because when I went over to New Mexico, I didn't see any blacks over there. I saw 90% Hispanic when I went over.
Oh yeah. Where were you at?
Los Lunas.
Los Lunas?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Corey, you've been down there to Los
yeah,
Lunas
yeah,
before,
yeah.
haven't you?
Los Lunas. That's what mainly was in Los Lunas stores, Hispanics.
Okay.
Yeah, you're gonna get the blacks when you get to Albuquerque, Hobbs, and probably Las
Yeah,
Cruces,
yeah,
Alamogordo, the big
yeah.
because Hobbs is right there on the Texas border. Then Albuquerque, Las Cruces, Alamogordo, those are the cities. So you're gonna have a mixture of everybody down there. But them little rural towns, like yeah, Los Lunas is definitely
Oh yeah.
that's like an outskirt of Albuquerque. It's about 30 minutes outside of Albuquerque, but yeah, it's mainly
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, because when I went to check into the hotel in Los Lunas, they basically asked me, "Do I speak Spanish?" I had to pull out a Google Translate, man.
There we go. We got the man of the hour on, Dr. Reverend Charles E. Becknell. How you doing, Unc? He on mute.
Yeah.
Yep, you on mute, Unc.
You might be able to unmute him.
Oh, let me
Right.
see. Let me see if I can unmute him. No, all it do is ask to unmute.
Can you text him?
There we go.
There you
There
go.
we go. You got it now, Unc.
Yeah.
Dr. Becknell, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing good.
Hey, good to see you.
This technology is beating me upside the head, man.
Hey, it's beating us all tonight.
You young folks, you all know all about this stuff, man. But the only thing I grew up with in terms of technology was Dick Tracy and that watch.
Dick
Y'all
Tracy
know
and the
this-
watch, huh?
Yeah, you remember the watch Dick Tracy had?
Yes, sir.
No.
Yeah, I got 3 of those now.
Before your time. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. We got a couple of your nephews on here too, Corey and Richard on with us tonight.
Oh,
Hey,
okay.
Unc, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Where are you
Hey,
at? I'm looking for you.
I'm on here.
Are you on your laptop, Uncle Charles?
Yeah.
Okay. You got the gallery view up?
I see Richard.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't see Corey yet.
what's the gallery
Say
view?
something,
Oh,
Corey.
there,
So we can see your face.
there he is.
You see him?
You got me now? Right.
Y'all better behave yourself. You got
Yes,
that
sir.
family tradition you need to carry on.
Right.
Absolutely.
All right.
I didn't already read your bio because it took a minute, but I made the group aware of you being raised in Hobbs, New Mexico, and how you created the African American Studies over at UNM, and how you used to hang out with Stokely Carmichael with Charles Jr. on his shoulders.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
those were some good times. The civil rights movement. Man, I tell you, there was a lot of activity going on, and I got a chance to meet a whole lot of people. In fact, I don't know if you all know Dr. Bernard Lafayette. He passed away a couple of weeks ago, and they had his funeral on the 22nd of March, I think last Friday or Saturday. Dr. Lafayette was a lieutenant with Dr. Martin Luther King. He was a member of the SNCC. He member of SCLC. He was a freedom rider. He got on that bus in Memphis, Nashville, Tennessee, with a group of students. And one of the stories that Dr. Lafayette would tell is that when those students got on that bus for the freedom rides, riding those buses all the way down to Louisiana, they stopped in Birmingham, but he said, and it's really stuck with me, that many of those students, when they got on that bus, before they got on that bus, they wrote a letter, sealed a letter, and gave it to somebody and said, if we don't come back, give this letter to my mother, give this letter to my father, give this letter to my family. That took courage because they didn't know if they were coming back. When they got to Birmingham, members of the Ku Klux Klan, the White Citizens Council, the police, locked the doors of the bus and set the bus on fire.
Wow.
This is what those kids went through, y'all. And these are some of the shoulders that we're standing on. Dr. Lafayette, when Medgar Evers got killed, Dr. Lafayette's name was on the list to be next. In fact, he got shot that night, but he didn't die. He was one of the icons in the civil rights movement. You didn't read much about him, but he was commissioned by Dr. King to head up Operation Breadbasket. A lot of our young people don't know about these people. They're dying off, but the movement goes on. Alex Haley once said, when an old person dies, it's like a library being burned to the ground. And so I admonish you, young people, talk to your elders, learn the history, learn where they came from, what they stood for. I grew up at a time when there was segregation. I grew up in a segregated community. The separate water fountains, separate seats at the back of the bus, separate, we could not go into a restaurant. We had to eat in the back of the restaurant where they had a table set up for us. I never learned how to swim because we couldn't go to the local swimming hole for swimming. I never learned how to roller skate because we couldn't go to the skating rink. And we didn't have sidewalks in our community, so we couldn't skate on the sidewalks. And I say this to say that your ancestors, brothers, went through some very difficult times. And they had to scrape for everything that they came up with. And many of us, we kind of took it for granted. But they made the sacrifice so that we could be who we are today. They didn't make that sacrifice for us to act crazy and do crazy stuff. They didn't make that sacrifice for us to hang out with, well, I'm not going to say that. But anyway, the community that I grew up in, I call it a village. Some people say I grew up in this community, that community. But let me tell you, I grew up in a village. It was self-contained. There were boundaries that we could not penetrate, especially after dark. But we lived in a community that was segregated. And the only thing we had was each other. In that village, we looked out for each other. We took care of each other. I remember the men in the community. Once a year, they would plant this garden, huge garden. And anyone in the village that wanted food could go to that garden and get what they wanted. They wanted black-eyed peas, green beans, corn, watermelon, whatever it was. And nobody took more than what they needed. We had poor people. All of us were poor, we just didn't know it. But there's a difference between being poor and po. We were poor, but we were not po, because we always had food. And we raised our own food. You know, right now, You all heard of Colonel Sanders. All these chicken places springing up. We call it carry out. You can get chicken, you carry it out. Well, our chicken was carry in because we'd go in the backyard, grab a chicken, wring his neck, and carry him in the house for mama to cook. We raised our own food. And once a year, we would put vegetables in these jars because we knew in the wintertime we wouldn't have a garden. So what they did was they put it in these jars. It was called canning. And we had these shelves full of black-eyed peas, green beans, what have you. But to make a long story short, we took care of each other. Children in the community, they belong to the community. What that meant was everybody in that community was your mama or your daddy. You got out of line, they could chastise you. And then they'll tell your mama and daddy what they did. Then you get it one more time from your mama and daddy. So we belong to the community. Now, this is very important because none of us could get away with anything. And they say the night have 1,000 eyes. Believe me, there were 1,000 eyes, and you could not. And one of the worst things that you could do is to lie to mom. She would not put up with that. And I remember my mother would ask me, Charles Everett? Yeah, Mom. You know, when she used your middle name, you were in trouble, brother. So she said, do you have anything you want to tell me? Now, that's a pretty intimidating question because you don't know what mama knows. And if you say no and she got something, you might wake up next week. But if you say yes, oh, I didn't know that. But you don't get it as hard as you will if you told a lie. The church was the center of our activity. We couldn't go uptown to, the only thing we could do uptown, we could go to what we called a picture show. Today, you guys call it a cinema, right?
Yeah.
A movie. We call it a picture show. And initially, they set us in the balcony to be away from white folks. Well, that didn't last too long because when we bought a Coca-Cola with ice, we'd just drop ice over the top of the balcony on white folks. Some of us picked up little pebbles, not big rocks, but pebbles, and throw them over the top. So they set us down at the bottom with a sign that says, from this seat back, that's where Black folks could sit.
Mm.
But the church was the center of all of our activities. And we had Easter programs, Christmas programs, potlucks, and which showed us that you could have fun in church, but the church was part of our spiritual development. I know my mother, Terrence, your grandmother, Sunday morning, what would she do?
It's time to go to church.
She'd shake you out of that bed. Today, you know, you hear people say, My kid told me that he didn't want to go to church. If I'd have told my mother that, they'd still be looking for body parts in Hobbs, New Mexico. Parenting, they took it very seriously. But one thing the church and the segregated school taught us was to how to be young men and young women, how to respect older people. If you call the older person by their first name, well, I tell you, that wouldn't end too well for you. You better put Mr. or Mrs. before that. And I say that because we're losing a lot of our culture, those things that made us who we are. Now, this segregated school, I had all black teachers. I didn't see a white teacher until I got to the 7th grade. And when I got to the 7th grade, from Booker T. Washington School, I was prepared because the black teachers, they cared. They lived in our community. They went to our church. They taught Sunday school. They looked out for our welfare. And they insisted that we learn. They insisted on reading, writing, and arithmetic. We had to learn. And if you got caught doing your multiplication tables on your fingers, they'd come over with a ruler and smack you on your hands. You had to learn. So consequently, when we went into that integrated school, we were prepared. And it was something about the older people, my mom and that generation, they had an idea of what the future was going to be like. Because my mother always told me, get a good education. That's something a white man can't take away from you. And she insisted on us learning. So in junior high school, we competed. We held our own. It was tough. They didn't want us there. But the church, the family, the community kept us strong. Let me jump forward because we don't have much time. When I got to high school, I played basketball, which was an honor to make the team. And but when I got ready to graduate, during my generation, if you were a male and you turned 18 and you're getting ready to graduate from high school, once you got that diploma, brother, you had to go. Now, your parents never said, hey, you're 18, you got to get out of the house. No, when you got that diploma, you kind of hanging around, they look at you funny. Like, they don't have to say it. It's about time for you to make a decision. So I went to my high school counselor and I said, look, turning 18, getting ready to graduate, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Where am I going to go? What am I going to do? He went through a couple of options. He finally said, you know, your best bet now is to go to the Army. I said, the Army? I said, aren't they shooting at folks over there, man? Why you want me to go over there? He said, you make a good life in the Army, you know. and which is, I got no problems with people joining the Army. But I was 18, I didn't want to go to the Army. So I said, what about college? Well, I remember this as clear as he said this yesterday. Oh no, college is not for everyone. You would be wasting your time and your money if you went to college. What a terrible thing to say to a young man. But that's the way it was at that time. So I said, okay, I'm gonna join the Army. But I got a reprieve. I was a pretty good basketball player, so I got a letter in the mail inviting me to participate in the North-South All-Star basketball game, which was played in August. So I had until August to make my decision. Well, when I went up to Albuquerque, these were the best players from the South and the best players from the North played against each other. Went up to Albuquerque, had a pretty good game, and this guy walks up to me and he says, Charles Becknell? I said, yes, sir. He said, how would you like to come to college on a basketball scholarship? I said, I don't think so, sir. He said, what? I said, well, my counselor told me I wasn't college material. He said, why don't you give it a try? Okay, I don't want to go to the Army and get shot at. So I went to college, first semester, 2.7, which is not bad for a kid from Hobbs who was told he couldn't make it in college. Taking 16 hours, part-time job, basketball practice, 2 girlfriends. Man, I think 2.7 pretty good. So I learned a very valuable lesson. And I want to pass this on to you all. You must give it a try. Give it a try. Try it. Because you might surprise yourself. Because if you don't try, I hear people say, well, I might fail. Well, if you don't try, you failed anyway. Am I right?
Yeah.
Now, later on, you'll say, oh, man, I wish I'd had. Well, that's water under the bridge now. You can't put toothpaste back in the tube. You can't unscramble an egg. I made a decision. No matter what the obstacles I was going to face, and I faced many obstacles. It was not easy, I'm telling you. Faced many obstacles. But I had to hit those obstacles head on. Because you know why? It just makes you stronger. If you get knocked down, get back up. I've never seen anybody win a boxing match on flat on their back. But I have seen people get up off the mat and win the match. So never, ever give up. Terrence will start telling you about some of my friends. Stokely Carmichael was a good friend of mine. Dr. Lafayette, good friend of mine. I've met many of the icons in the civil rights movement. And in fact, in Hobbs, New Mexico, and Terrence, I don't know if I told you this, Richard, and if I told you guys this, but in 1960, a few of us were riding around in a car. And this is hard to imagine with gas prices today. gas was 19 cents a gallon. Can you imagine that? So
Wow.
we could put $1 worth of gas in the car and we could just ride. There was nothing else to do in Hobbs but ride around in the car on a Sunday afternoon. So we decided to go into this department store, McClellan's department store. Went into the department store, sat down at the lunch counter, and ordered a hamburger. The waitress came out and said, "Oh, no, no, you can't sit there. We don't serve colored people here." And my big mouth buddy, I had a buddy there that was with us. He had a big mouth. He said, "Look, lady, we ordered a hamburger. We didn't order any colored people. We don't eat colored people. We want a hamburger." "Oh, I can't serve you, can't serve you." So I said, "Look, we can come into this department store and shop all over this department store, buy $300 worth of clothing, and we can buy a 35-cent hamburger." So we left. That set off a spark. We went to this restaurant, which was right across the street from the dividing line of the Black community, called Pete's Dinner Bell. They had a policy, Black folks can't come into the front of the restaurant. We had to go to the back in order to get a meal. Well, 3 of us walked in, we sat at the front, went to the front. Waitress just kept walking by us, wouldn't even acknowledge us. And we said, "This is not right. Something's got to change." So we got on the phone, we called the district attorney. And we said, "Look here, man, this is a new day. We need some change." He called them up and said, "Look, he called Pete up and said, "I got a complaint from these guys. And, the law's on their side. You better serve them." Waitress came over and kind of threw the menu at us. "What y'all want?" Well, my big mouth buddy said, "I want a pine float." She said, "A pine float? I ain't never heard of that. What's a pine float?" He said, "A glass of water with a toothpick in it." And we walked out. Went to another restaurant, did the same thing, called the district attorney. But one evening, one of my friends had borrowed his mother's car. She was a cook in one of the local restaurants. And we had to take her keys because she worked late. So we took her the keys. And, we were all decked out. We had a coat, tie on, and everything. Walked through the front of the restaurant, and everybody just kind of froze. Went to the back, handed her the keys, walked back out. They fired that lady, told her not to come back to work. This is what we went through, y'all. So in my civil rights work, I met people like Julian Bond, Angela Davis, Charles Evans, Stokely Carmichael. He and I became very, very good friends. So one of the things, and then too, I just got to tell you this. There was a club in Hobbs, a nightclub, that was on what they call the Chitlin Circuit. Due to segregation, there was a string of nightclubs from the South all the way across country to California. And they would play in these clubs. So I got to see James Brown before he became famous, Bobby Blue Bland, Will Anthony and the Imperials, all those superstars that came along later, stopped in Hobbs, New Mexico.
Wow.
But after they played, they had to get in the car and leave town because they couldn't stay at the hotel. And there were no black hotels in Hobbs. So I'm going to stop here in a minute, but there was some information I wanted to just give you guys. And it's called, What is a Real Man? And I want you all to think about this because you can be role models for our younger generation. As many of them are going astray because they don't have the kind of discipline that I had, that my nephews had growing up. Because let me tell you this, my mother could be a gangster whenever she had to be. And anybody here ever been hit by a flying shoe? You know what I'm talking about. I swear, my mother could throw a curve. You know, you run down the hall and you take a right, here comes that shoe right behind you. I don't know how that shoe got around the corner. But you could be role models for young people because I was a teacher in the public schools and I ran into one of my former students. This is back in 1969. Some of you weren't even a twinkle in your daddy's eyes at that time. And he was telling my wife, Dr. Becknell was the best teacher I ever had because he would not let us get away with anything. I held my black students to a higher standard because I knew the value of education. I'm kind of dismayed about some of the diminishing aspects of our culture. But here's what this statement says. Boys play house, men build homes. The title of this is, What is a Real Man? Boys play house, men build homes. Boys shack up, men get married. Boys make babies, men raise children. Boys don't raise his own children. Men raise their own children and someone else's. Boys invent excuses for failure. Men produce strategies for success. Boys look for someone to take care of them. Men look for someone to take care of. Boys seek popularity. Men earn respect by knowing how to give it. Boys quit and walk away when things get hard. Men promise to love you through it all. That's what I read, some of the elements of a real man. And this is what we should be striving for today. I'm going to stop here for a moment. If you all have any questions, just a little synopsis of what I went through. I've been to Africa. I've seen how Africans live. When I was growing up, one of the worst things that one black person could call another one was an African. You had a fight on your hands if you somebody called you a Black African. But that changed. In 1960, we saw these African nations getting their independence. We saw these proud Black African men with suits and ties on, heads of state, educators, taking their place on the world stage, wearing dashikis and afros. And we say, hey, not so bad after all. So we were proud, and we need to develop that pride again. Okay, I'm going to stop here. Any questions or comments? We still
Oh
have.
man, thank you for that, Uncle Charles. That was real good, giving us that history. I had a question. Were you in the Black Panther Party?
No, but I knew some Black Panthers.
Okay,
I'm not
okay,
going to say. I'm not going to say how I knew them, but I was the official member of the Black Panther Party. Okay,
yeah.
and I'm going to leave it at that because somebody might be listening in. No, let me just say this. There was a time in my life I was pretty angry. And I shudder to think right now some of the thoughts that I had. Just anger about the way things were. But I knew that the only way that we could change this system was to follow what Frederick Douglass says. Power concedes nothing without a demand. Consequently, I wrote this book called No Challenge, No Change. If we don't challenge the system, nothing's going to change. It's just going to be. And somebody's got to stand up and do the challenge. Now, bear in mind, when you challenge the system, you're going to pay a price. And I have paid a price, y'all. But I have no regret. I have no regrets because a lot of people have benefited from what? Some of the things that I did.
We got a
Anybody else?
question from Phil. Phil, what you got?
Yes, sir. Dr. Becknell, first, I just want to thank you, sir, for sharing with us tonight. We really appreciate it. Man, just a wealth of knowledge in just a short time you've spoken, and I really appreciate it. I have several questions, but I'll just ask one at a time. My first question is, what do you think about today's youth, how they feel about our history isn't their history, and how they feel it's not their problem? I mean, I was raised in a small town in Arkansas. I've experienced racism. My parents, they went, through segregation. My brother, who's only 6 years older than me, started off school in segregation. So I get it. I understand it. But even when Trayvon Martin, when that situation happened, we went in one of the local suburb cities here to march, and my son and his friends like, that's not our problem. Why do we have to go? But I was trying to teach him, share some of the history and everything with him. But today's generation, they just feel it's not their problem, not their fight. How do you feel about that, sir?
A few years ago, I taught a course at the University of New Mexico called The History of Civil Rights. And I had 18, 19, 20-year-old students in the class, mostly Black students. Some of the incidences and some of the leaders in the civil rights movement, they never heard of. They didn't believe it. So I got a hold of this series called Eyes on the Prize. It's, I think, a 6-point series about the civil rights movement. And I brought those videotapes in so they could see what they went through. They could see the dogs. They could see the fire hoses. They could see the sheriffs hitting people upside the head. They could see them kicking people while they were down on the ground. And these fire hoses were, I mean, it's not like your garden hose. I mean, these things would knock you off your feet. This is how people were treated. And then they started thinking, man, you mean all this happened? Yes. How did we come out of it? There's another good friend of mine, he went on, he passed on, named C.T. Vivian. In this video, he was confronting this burly sheriff, real big old guy in Birmingham, Alabama. And Vivian was talking to the sheriff and says, why did you do this? Why did you hate us? How could you do this to us? And the sheriff, even though the video was in black and white, you could see him turning red. I mean, here's a Negro talking to him like that. So he punched him. The sheriff punched C.T. Vivian, knocked him to the floor, to the ground. C.T. got up, dusted himself off, and kept talking. And I was having breakfast with him one day at one of our SCLC meetings. And I said, C.T., you know, I don't know how you could handle that, how you handle that. Because if he'd have done that to me at my age, but I'd have got up swinging and probably been dead. You know what he told me? He said, Dr. Becknell, let me tell you something. Our movement under Dr. Martin Luther King, we believed in nonviolence. Had I got up swinging, the whole concept of nonviolence would have gone right out the window. We had to believe in nonviolence. And that's one of the things in the civil rights movement under Dr. King, nonviolence. And I think the nonviolence that really got us to the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. Because people were ashamed. That's when national TV began to show these things all over the world. And it was the shame that was put on America. So Black history is important. We need to go beyond, you know, George Washington Carver and talk about what George Washington Carver went through. You see, he took a peanut and got 300 patents from this peanut that they brought from Africa. Okay? That's the story, what George Washington. I did a lecture at Iowa State University. In Iowa, of all places, there's a building there, a science building, George Washington Carver Science Building in Iowa. Can you believe that?
Wow.
And he got 200 patents from the potatoes, sweet potatoes, called it the yam. So what I'm saying is there's a story behind each one of these people that we hold up, and we just do the surface part. You know, they called Booker T. Washington and Uncle Tom because he got along with white folks, but he knew how to get along with white folks. But he did it to make things better for us. That's the history we need. And, you know, Black history is like, I equate it with an onion. You know, if you take an onion, you peel it, there's another layer, right? Peel that back, there's another layer. Our history is not anywhere near the complete story. We got so much more to learn. Anybody
You have
else?
another question, Phil?
Oh, I was gonna let anybody else ask a question, but since I got the floor, my second question is, what do you think, Dr. King and the other leaders, and including yourself, what do you think, or what would they say about the state of the Black community now? I mean, I think you spoke about education. I think a lot of us, especially, the kids and even us as adults, kind of take education for granted now. What do you say about that, or what do you think your peers would think about it now if they were here?
You know, it's kind of hard to say. I think Dr. King would continue to spread the moral aspect of human dignity. And it was the morality that was infused into the civil rights movement, I think, that made it powerful. You see, before they went out on a march, they met in a Black church. Why did they meet in a church? That's the only thing that we owned as Black people. We could not go to the school up down and to the Holiday Inn. We had the Black church. So in their meeting, what did they do? They had devotion, they sang hymns, they prayed, they got fortified, and they went out and took care of business. I think he would continue to do that. I think the leaders of the past, they would be appalled at the hunger that is prevalent in our communities, Black and white. You know, they would be appalled at the fact that there's food sitting in warehouses right now and people are hungry. I think they would be appalled at us dropping bombs on people rather than sitting down trying to work things out. And I think they would continue to push that agenda, the moral aspect of it. But I think they would be also proud because we've got a group of young people right now that are highly educated. Look at who is on the forefront right now of our civil rights efforts. Black women.
Yeah. Yeah.
Courageous,
Black women.
standing up. Come on, brothers, we got to get out there and support our women. We got to give them, and you know, if we look at the Bible, we should be out there taking care of business ourselves. Not to say women should be in the background, the forefront, but side by side, you're talking about a powerful force. So I think they would be proud of the education that people are getting. But what are we doing with that education? That is the question. I think they would push that. If you get a good education, use it to help somebody else.
All right, we got a question from Jerome. Jerome, what you got? Then we're gonna go to Brian.
Good evening, Dr. McNeil. It's an honor to have you come and speak to us tonight. I just want to ask you a question. I'm 60, I'm 64 this year, and in 1977, we were, it seemed like we were all heading in the right direction. Segregation, schools, that was right beyond the cusp of it. Like everybody was just still in. You were in the park, you were playing. White kids were playing with black kids, all this stuff. And then ABT came out with Roots in 1977, right? An all-star cast. I mean, it had everybody in Hollywood was part of, as you know, Dr. Burnell, was part of that nine or 10 day documentary. And I think I was only 15 years old. I was living in New York, but when parents moved to Miami, to pretty much, and when I moved to Miami in '75, it was predominantly white, okay, at the time. But after the first episode of Roots, I mean, the night you look at it this way, Wonderful World of Disney came on at 7, and then not 8 and 9 o'clock, it showed Roots with Alex Haley. And the next day, everybody went to school, and it just exploded. I mean, black kids was beating up on white kids. It was just bad. You know, and I think the fact, man, it took you back to the time where you talk about, back when we wasn't segregated, it was a lot about how we were being beat. That was even longer than that, back to slavery. And I know at the time, and I said myself, you were part of the movement during that time as well. You knew what you were going, you had went through, right? And I just saw, and I had a visual of just think about how bad it was from 1977 to about my 1979. It was just bad. I mean, you're talking about 15-year-old kids beating up on white kids. Okay, I'm just beating them up because of what they saw at Roots. Okay, that documentary series. I mean, if they played it today, I don't think it would have the same popular effect that it had back then. But what was your take on Roots when the documentary? As a member, as a gentleman who goes back in time and teaches African American history. You know, um, I was just kind of wondering, did that movie add to your curriculum, and what was your take on the movie at the time? Because I think you probably were probably right around 36, 37 in that area that time. I was 15. And it was pretty bad, It was, and we just not talking about. I mean, every community reacts to it differently, but I mean, back then, it was all in the news. Kids were beating up kids. White kids were being, just like they were getting beat up because we saw what our ancestors were getting beat up back then. The story of Roots. So, just want to get your take on that. What's your thought process on that, and how did it affect you in your journey as you've been journeying on teaching others about the history of Black history?
You know, let me just say this. Hate is a learned emotion. Therefore, it can be unlearned. And kids, where did they learn this from? Their parents and their community. If we look at that movie, different people have different reactions. Some act out of guilt, so they want to fight. But they're learning. And to me, that just added to the body of knowledge that was being developed at that time in terms of Black history. So sometimes we get information and it stirs something up in us. And it just depends on your upbringing, how you handle it. But one thing that I learned that sticks with me today, Alex Haley said that this slave named Punta Kinte, we had an oral history, and we still have an oral history all of our history was not written because they wouldn't allow us to read and write. But he said that he was trying to trace back Kunta Kinte's village. And all he had was that name. But he finally went to that village. And this is what, many years later, went back to that village. And each African tribe had what they call a griot. A griot was somebody who was given the responsibility of preserving the history of that particular village. So he said when he went back to that village, he mentioned the name Kunta Kinte. And this griot said, yeah, we remember him. He went down to the river to get a bucket of water and he never came back. This is why I tell young people, talk to your grandpa, talk to your grandma, carry on that tradition. You have a history and a culture that needs to be preserved. We don't want to lose our culture. But I see so much imitation right now. People, black folks trying to act like white folks. But you know, I often say, we know more about white folks than they know about us.
No, sir.
Yeah. But the bottom line is, when we sit down and talk to each other, whether you're black, white, whatever, we find that we have more in common than we are different. And we shouldn't let the difference dictate how we relate to each other.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Again, like I said, just when you all your life, you visualize what you see, visual depicted on screen, and what you read. To be able to speak to somebody, your students who's been doing this and taking this knowledge and taking it on college campuses and lectures, because you were there. You know what I'm saying? You lived it. You went through the movement. I just like I said, when I looked at that movie, it was like and I've seen it in its totality when it was first coming out. I've seen it a couple of times. It just was the fact of the matter. Like I said, it was a tough movie at that time period.
Yeah.
As you can probably attest to that. And it was great to be able to finally talk to somebody that's actually speaking about the history before that movie, right? As we continue to move forward, because at the end of the day, Mr. Becknell, it's if the movie came out today, I think it wouldn't have the same explosion that it had back then. But just because it was so close to getting out of getting segregation, talking to your parents, talking to your grandparents, like you said, sir, and then for that to see it, like you said, we probably didn't know how to handle it, and again, and I'll be honest with you, that was a couple, that was a year I was very thankful I was African American, because what was going on with the kids, one day you playing baseball with them, and the next day you out there seeing them getting beat up, so it was tough, you know what I'm saying? But I just wanted to be able to ask that question. I appreciate you answer the question for me and give me the knowledge about it, because for a long period of time, you always want to get a perspective of someone who actually went through the movement, right? So, and I appreciate that. Appreciate you again being part of the platform. Appreciate that.
Great. Thank you.
All right, let's go to Brian B. Sessions. What you got?
Good evening, Dr. Becknell. How you doing?
Okay.
Got a question for you. I came across something earlier today. Just watching social media for one of our gubernatorial candidates, and it was talking about how black people are being purged from the ballot. And I took the challenge and I went on to check my registration status, and I voted in every election since President Obama. But when I went to check my status today, it says inactive. How do you encourage the younger kids who's saying my vote don't matter when you go in and check your status and it says you're inactive and you know you've been active in elections? So from someone that went through the civil rights and went through the movement, how do you keep or how do you encourage the younger people that their vote do matter?
You know, I have to go back to history. Our people fought, bled, died for the right to vote. They didn't make that sacrifice for us to make those kind of statements. There's power in the vote. And you know, right now, they're trying to pass.
Okay.
They're trying to pass this Save America bill, where you have to have all of these different passport, birth certificate. That's impacting white folks. Now, while they were sitting back, while we were fighting this battle, they say history repeats itself. This is going to impact them. Now you see white folks fighting for the right to keep the right to vote. Now, if it wasn't important, why is white society trying to keep us away from it? Everything good, they want to keep us away from it. So collectively, our vote can make a difference. If we get Black folks registered in a community and they vote in a block, and this is what I'm trying to do here in New Mexico, get us to vote in a block. We've got a Native American woman who's a good friend of mine running for governor. We're only 3% of the population here. But the last two elections were won by 2,500, 3,000 votes. We can make a difference. And once we make that difference, we can call some shots. And the vote will give us that, put us in that position. But you know, what we've got to overcome is we got some people who want to be the HNIC and they sell out all of our people so that they can get a few crumbs from these politicians. Well, let me tell you this, Becknell is not for sale. Never have been, never will be. Anytime that I can get in a position to help another Black person, I'm going to do it. I ran a large state agency here in New Mexico, and I multi-million-dollar budget, I don't know how many employees. I was hiring so many Black folks, the Black folks got scared. They said, Becknell, you hired another? Yeah. I said, because we only get one bite of the apple. We may never get this opportunity again.
Right.
So anytime I can put food on another person's table, and I wasn't just doing this for Blacks, I was helping Hispanics and what have you. Anytime that we can help somebody, you know, I hear people say, I can't change the world. If you just change the life of one person, guess what? You just changed the world. That person will never be the same. I know I've had people who have helped me along the way. You know, we're paying rent here on this earth. God didn't put us here just to kick back and drink Kool-Aid. He wants us to help somebody.
Amen.
Now, young people need a lot of help, y'all. Be a role model. Be a positive person. And you say, let young people know. Like Jesse Jackson said, I am somebody. I may be a little raggedy. My mama and daddy may not have the best job. We may not have that much food on the table. But I tell you what, we are somebody. And that's what they instilled in us at a very early age. Get a good education. That's something a white man can't take away from you. And I've always tried to spread that to others.
Amen.
Thank
Let me
you.
tell you one more thing. In my church, I pastored a church for 25 years. In my church, we never had one dropout. We never lost one child to drugs. We never had one teen pregnancy. Our children excelled. 2.7, 2.8, 3 point, 4 point. During the summer, I required my kids to read 12 books over the summer. 2 had to be on Black history. Okay? I personally reviewed every report card of every child in my church. You know that made the difference? Because our kids went on to college. And guess what? They got good jobs. And several of them came back into the church. Now they're tithing. You see how that works? An investment, and it comes back.
So
You give, it comes back to you tenfold.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Uncle Charles. So, how was it since D. Roberts brought up being one of the first engineers in his school? How was it with that kind of pressure, or if you felt any, going through college back in your time, and any type of peer pressure that came at you? How was that for you?
You know, I didn't have much peer pressure. I had a group of friends that we hung together from freshman year to my senior year, and we're still friends today. Some of them have
Wow.
gone on to be with the Lord, but we just looked out for each other. And I remember once we were in the recreation room, sitting at the table drinking a 7-Up, Coke, whatever. And this one dude came up. Now, my friends were white and Hispanic, and he used the N word. And I leaned back, but one of my buddies grabbed him by the collar and showed him the door. So I didn't have to deal with that kind of stuff, because
Yeah.
I had the friends that covered me, and we covered each other. And one of the one of the we formed this little group because we didn't have much money. We would pool our money and go to this little joint and drink beer. And when that money was gone, then we were gone. But we formed this group because we were making fun of the fraternity boys. They came in with their jackets on, with their little label on their, thing, and all ties on and everything. We said, man, these guys are so stiff-necked, they don't even know how to have fun. So we called ourselves the hobos. We still got hobos today, man, because we were anti-fraternity,
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, it was never an issue with me in college. Well, look, we're about out of time, aren't we?
Yes. So I was going to ask you, since you've graced us with your presence tonight, and we definitely appreciate it, Unc, for being on and speaking with us. Would you mind praying us out? Because after every session, at the end of every session, we always have someone pray us out.
Amen.
So it would only be fitting for you to pray us out tonight.
Thank you for your knowledge, Minister.
Thank you. Just wait till you get to
It's an honor to meet you.
wait till you get the bill, Terrence.
That's okay.
I'm gonna spread it around. You see how many people here. I'm gonna
There
have
you
them
go.
chip in on it.
Send the bill. Send the bill.
Our Father in heaven, we come before you this evening, Lord, with our hearts full of thanksgiving and our hearts full of joy. What a fellowship we've had here tonight, Father. And we just thank you. We give you the glory. We give you the honor. And we pray, Father, that as we shared our knowledge and we shared our experiences, that we've all been uplifted, Father, and we've helped each other to be better men, stronger men than we were when we came up on this meeting. So, Father, we just pray for every family that's represented here tonight. We pray for the children in our community, Father. And Father, we pray that you'll use us as an instrument to show the world what can be done when men take their rightful place in this society. Give us courage, Father. Give us courage and give us hope in these trying times. And help us to never, ever, ever give up. If we get knocked down, Father, help us to get back up and keep on keeping on. And Lord, we just thank you for everything that happened here this evening. In the precious, matchless name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and for his sake. And all of God's children said, Amen.
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 Thank you,
Love
Mr.
you all,
Abby.
brother. Take care.
Appreciate you so much, sir.
All right. Thank you so much,
Powerful
Unc.
message.
We appreciate you.
Powerful message. Powerful message.
Appreciate you, Unc.
Thanks for your service, Doctor.
Yeah. Thank you, T.
All
Need
right.
me back again, just call me, okay?
All right.
Come
Thank
on,
you.
man.
And
Good.
I'll send that bill to you, Terrence.
Okay. I'm gonna spread it. All right, fellas. Hey, man, y'all have a good evening. Thanks for
All
joining
right.
tonight.